What's up guys, welcome back, and in this video I'd like to add a Laravel backend to the Mac App Store clone that we created. Now obviously the Mac App Store has many models and relationships, which I'm not going to be covering entirely. For this video I just want to have a few basic models and very basic communication between our front end and back end working. If we have time at the end, I'll quickly go over a database schema of how I would structure the tables and relationships for the rest of the models in the App Store. So I'm just going to be focusing on stories and products because that's mainly what you see on this page that we already have done. And I'm missing out on users, which is obviously a big part of the application. The reason I'm skipping it is because, one, I don't want to put in that much effort into getting users to work, but also the login isn't a typical login where you just enter your email and password. It's tied to your Apple login on the operating system, and I honestly don't know how to handle that. So yeah, we won't be looking at users in this video. Okay, so one quick change here. I just want to change this one to have the same structure as this, so we don't have to worry about different structures. So I'm going to go into here. This is in Discover. And what is it? It is called Get Focused Fast. Let me just change this real quick. So yeah, I'm going to remove the other one and just put this one in. I can just comment it out. It is this one. Yeah, this one. So let me just comment that one out and put this one in. Okay. And I believe there should be an MR6 here, or an ML4 here instead of right. Okay, cool. Okay, so if we take a look at the stories, which is what we'll start with, we can see that we have this in the carousel, and we have these ones over here. So I'm going to call these ones in the carousel featured stories, and I'm just going to refer to these as regular stories or normal stories. Okay, so let's jump right into a Laravel app, which I have right here. And let's start with stories. So I have some stuff I added already. I added the app URL because we're going to use the asset helper, and that generates a absolute path to an image, which will be storing in the database. And obviously I have my database set up. And everything else is fresh. Oh yeah, and I have all the images here. All the images from the front end. Obviously, the images belong in the back end for the apps and the stories, so I put them all here. Okay, so like I said, let's start with stories. And let's go into here, I believe is my command line for the Laravel app. And let's just do a PHP artisan make model story, and -a generates a controller and a migration as well, which is what we want. So let's do that. And while we're here, we might as well do the product as well, which is the only two models we'll be working with. Okay, let's set the migration up. So create story. Okay. Okay, I'm going to paste in some code here, and I'll explain it. So I just added all the fields here, and I'll show you what they correspond to. So category title is this thing here. So in this case, it's another title. In this case, it's featured app. In this case, it's featured app as well. Title is the title, obviously. Description is this. Content is the content that goes in once you click inside of it. So if I click in a story, this is going to be the content. What else? Featured image. So I have three types of images. Featured image will be this if it's a featured story. It'll be in here. Icon image is if it's not a featured story and it's just a normal story. So this is the icon image. And story image is the image once you click inside of it. So in the App Store, it's this one. So it's similar to the featured image, but I just have another field in there for that. And featured is just a Boolean to check if it's featured or not. And we might as well do the product as well while we're here. So let's go to create products table. And let's paste in some code as well, and I will explain it. So title. Title is obviously the title. Tagline is this. So in this case, it's a calming space. Icon is obviously the icon. Price is the price in cents. It's an integer. Description is once you click on it, there is a longer description here. Website is the website. And there's obviously more fields that can go in here, but this is what I have. And media 1 and media 2 are these two images once you click on it. So yeah, that's what I have for stories and products. And if you want to populate the database, when we did the -a, it actually created a factory. And you can totally use that if you want, but I personally like to use seeders, at least when I'm trying to explain stuff, just so the seeded data kind of makes more sense. So I'm going to make a few seeds. Let's make one for both stories and products. So let's start with products. Products, table, seeder. And let's make one for stories. And let's go into the seeder. So here, let's start with products. And I'm just going to paste in the code I have. So all this is doing is creating products, similar to what we already have in the front end. So it's just creating all these products in our database. And it's just using Eloquent here. So we actually have to go into the model. And let's set the protected, guarded equals an empty array. So we can do mass assignment. Sorry, this should be like that. And let's do the same for our story model. So paste that in here. Okay. And let's go to database seeder and add those two. So let's duplicate that. Oops. And let's change it to stories and products. Oops. Okay. So let's see if I did all of this right and try to migrate. Migrate fresh, and let's seed as well. It's -- seed. And yeah, that worked. If you look in our database, all of our data should be here. So products. So there we go. A few products here. Oh, I didn't do the stories seeder. Let me copy that in. So back into our code, let's go to stories table seeder. Just going to paste it in. Again, just creating a bunch of stories. So I think I have 8 here. 8, so 4 of them are featured and 4 of them are not featured. Right here. Okay, so let's try that again. Cool. And let's refresh. There we go. So the stories are in here now. And you can see the images here. So that's why I changed the app URL in our environment file, because it's using an absolute path. I'm using the asset helper right here. So if this were a real app, I'd probably make use of something like Amazon S3 or DigitalOcean Spaces, or Cloudinary actually is a good option too, to store all your image assets. But for this demo, I'm putting it here so you can grab it in the repo if you want to try it out. Okay, so now that we have our data in place, it is time to make an API. So let's go into our routes API file. And let's think about what we need here. So if you look at our App Store here, we'll see that obviously we have stories and products. So it might make sense to make an endpoint for stories and products. And we do need an endpoint for specific stories or products. Say, for example, we click into one. If I go to the real App Store, the URL for this, obviously there's no URLs, but it'll be /products/ID. But for this main Discover page, we're not listing out all the stories and all the products. It's just a subset of them. So what I'm going to do is make an endpoint for this specific page called Discover. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just bear with me and it will start to make sense as we go along. So I'm going to make a new route, and luckily for us, this is all just GET requests because we're just reading data. The endpoint's going to be Discover, and we're going to make a Discover controller, and then we're going to use the index, and let's just call it Discover.index. So let's go ahead and make a controller, PHP artisan make controller Discover controller, and let's make it resourceful. Okay, let's go into that. Okay, so in our index file, we need both stories and products. Again, this page shows stories and products. So let's do something like this. Stories, let's just grab everything for now. And obviously you can change this however you like. Say you just want featured stories, you would just do where featured equals true. But I'm just going to grab everything and I'll filter it on the front end. But yeah, definitely in a real app, you would filter it here on the back end. But since we only have a small amount of data, I'll just grab everything for the stories. And I'm going to do the same for the products. Product all, at least for now. And maybe we'll filter it down later. So I'm going to import both of these. And let's return both of these. So let's just do return as an array. Stories is going to be stories, and products is going to be products. And split a semicolon. And save that. And usually I would use my REST client here, but since it's just GET requests, we can just stick to the browser. So app store laravel.test/API/discover, I think. Okay, so there we go. So we have stories, and let me make this bigger. So you can see you have 8 items here for stories and 10 items for products. And that's exactly what we have in our database. So 8 for stories and 10 for products. Cool. Okay, so let's also make the endpoint for displaying one story or one product. So it'll be API/story/ID, something like that. So let's go into, we have a story controller here, which we automatically generated. And all we have to do is go to show and just return the story here. I'm not doing any validation. So we can do the same for our product controller. Let's go to show, and it's just paste product in here. And now this should work. Oh, sorry, I forgot to put it in the router. So let's quickly add those two routes. So it'll be stories/story, and it'll be story controller show. It's called story.show. Let's do the same for products. Product controller and product.show. Okay, let's see if this works. Did I not save? Sorry, it's stories. There you go. So there is the info for this specific story. And same for products. Cool. Okay, now let's work on our front end and consume this API. So we want to communicate with the API from within our Electron app here. So obviously we need, so I have it behind here and I have it here. So I'm going to install Axios, npm install Axios. Okay, that's done. Let's go ahead and set it up here. So I'm going to go into the app view and import it. And I just want to set the default URL here, so I don't have to keep setting it everywhere else. So I'm just going to do axios.defaults.base URL. And I'm going to set it to, what was it called? I think app store laravel.test/API. So obviously this would change based on your environment. You can also make use of environment files within JavaScript, but I'll just leave this here. And let's go ahead and go into our Discover component, and let's just see if we can get some data in here from our backend. So let's go into our code, our JavaScript I mean, and let's import Axios as well. And down here in the created hook, I'm just going to try to grab some data. So let's just make an Axios call. Let's get /discover. And then let's get the response. And let's just console log the response. See what we're getting here. And just do a quick catch here. Okay. So let's see what we get. Let's open up Electron. Let's open up DevTools. Let's make it bigger. And let's go to the console. And you can see this no access control allow origin. So we are getting Cores errors. So let's fix that on the server side using Laravel Cores. Just install that real quick. So we just have to do this, composer require it, and then just add it to our middleware, I think. So this is our Laravel, let's composer require it. And let's see where we're supposed to put it. Kernel.php, we'll just add this in our middleware, okay. Let's go back to our Laravel app, kernel. And let's put it right here. Let's wait for it to finish first. Okay, save this. And that should do it, I think. Let's try this again. And there is our data. Cool. So we're interested in the data. So let's change that. Response.data. So this should return both our stories and our products. So there we go. We have 8 stories and 10 products, which is everything in our database. Cool. So let's start populating this information with stuff from the backend. So I'm going to close this and let's make some variables, some state for stories. And let's just make it an empty array, and also for products. And up here, when the Axios call resolves, let's just set the stories. Response.data.stories, and let's do the same for our products. Okay. And now we just want to iterate over everything that's coming back and set them in here. So let's do that. So yeah, if this were real, I would break this out into components, but I'm just going to leave it in this discover view file for now. So right here is where the featured stories go. So there are 4 of them, I believe. So these 4 correspond to these 4 in here. Okay. So we don't need these 3 because we're going to be looping over them. So I'm going to get rid of these. So there should only be 1 now. Actually, hold on. Okay, I'm going to leave this one here because we're setting the background here and I'm going to need that. So I'm going to delete these 2. So there should only be 2 now. Okay, and there is. Actually, let me just get rid of this one. And something else I'm going to do is change this to go-to story, because that's going to interfere with the name of story we're going to give it. So let me just change this to go-to. Okay. And let me put this on its own line so it's cleaner. And here is where we can do a v4. So story in stories, we're going to iterate over stories. And let's give it a key. Story.id. And let's see what we get. So yeah, there should be 8 because there's 8 stories in our backend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there's 8, but it's not rendering correctly in Flickity. So we just have to re-render it after the Axios call comes back, just so Flickity can re-render correctly. So down here, back to our JavaScript, we can just do something like this. So we can just do this next tick, and then pass an arrow function. And then in here, there's actually a ref on the Flickity container. Flick. Right here, it says ref equals Flickity, so we can use that. So we can just do this, this.refs.flickity.re-render. And that should fix the rendering issue. Okay, so there should be 8 of these now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. And now we just have to replace the titles and all that stuff with the correct information. Okay, so the background image is here, and it's just story.featured image. Again, this is coming from the backend. So featured image is this full URL here. So that should render correctly. And this one should be, I think, story.category title. And this one should be story. Yep, story title. And this one should be story description. And that should work. So there we go. We have some Laravel text. So let me just refresh that. So yeah, this is coming from the backend now. Yep, this is coming from the backend. Cool. Awesome. So yeah. So just to prove to you it's coming from the backend, let's look at the last one. Apps for developers. That should be this one. This one, apps for developers. Cool. But remember how I said we just want featured stories in here? So if you look in our database, there is a featured flag, and only the first 4 are featured, but right now it's showing everything. So we can fix this in 2 ways. One, we can just pass in from our backend. Where is it? It's Discover, I think, Discover controller. We can pass in normal stories and featured stories and then just handle that in the front end. Or before, what I'm going to do is just filter it in the front end since it's not that many products. It's not that many stories. So let's go ahead and make a computed property. And that computed property is just responsible for returning only featured stories. So let's make a computed in here. And let's just call it featured stories. And all it's going to do is return this dot stories. And we're going to filter it down. And we just want to make sure that it's featured. So story dot featured. And now let's go ahead and story in this v4 instead of stories, we'll just do featured stories. And now there should only be 4 in there. So 1, let me just refresh. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. Okay, now let's work on these 2, which are normal stories. So same deal. So it's these 2 over here. So we're going to be iterating over these. And let me just format this real quick. And I'm going to change this to go to story. And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to do v4 story in. So we need another computer property which just gets the normal stories. So we'll define that in a second. And the key is going to be story ID. And let me just fill this out. There should be story category title. There should be story title. And there should be story description. And let's go ahead and go into our computed properties. And let's add a new one here. Let's call it normal stories, I think is what I named it. And it's going to do the same thing here, except it's not featured. So let's see how that looks and if that works. So let me just refresh this. So yeah, I'm not sure why there's 5 there. There should only be 4. Let me check the database. So there should only be these 4, starting from featured app to, declutter your hard drive to apps for developers. Oh, okay, this is the hard-coded one. Yep. So let me remove the hard-coded one, and we should be good. Okay, so where's the hard-coded one? This is the hard-coded one. So we're going to have to do a trick because we have to fix the gap. I'll just delete this. I'll show you in a second. We can delete this one too. Okay, so there should only be 4 here now. But in our design, we only have 2 here, so we can just filter that down. So back to our computed properties. Let's just filter it down to only have 2. So we can use slice, and it only shows 2. So there you go. So this is coming from the backend now. So as you can see, it's slightly off here because it's doing margin right of 4 for both times. And in our original design, we had margin right 4 on this one and margin left 4. So you should probably use CSS Grid. And this will avoid having to do conditionals to check if it's the last item and stuff like that, because there is a grid gap property which will help with this stuff. But I'm not going to use CSS Grid because that's too much work. So we'll just do a patch fix here. So let's go back up there. So this one. So to fix this, we just want to add this margin right if the index is 0. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to grab the index. And then we're just going to add a conditional on a class. And this will just add to the current list of classes. Let's add a MR8 if the index is 0. And let's get rid of this MR4. And that should do it. Okay, so that's lined up and that's lined up. Okay, cool. Again, you should definitely make use of CSS Grid here. And there's a plugin for Tailwind for CSS Grid. And it actually works really well. Sorry, I think I forgot to change these images here. So back to our code. Yeah, right here. Let's change this to... Actually, no, we have to bind this. It's going to be story dot... what's it called? Icon underscore image. Let's change that. Okay, so this one is what I have in the backend, but you saw this one change. Cool. Okay, now let's do the same thing for this section over here. So apps and games we love right now. Apps and games. Okay, so right here. So this is using flex wrap. So these are the 4 images. And we have to do that trick again because PL6 here and PR6 here. Okay, we'll worry about that later. So I'm going to delete these 3. No longer need these. So there should be 1 here. Okay, and we'll just iterate over the products this time instead of the stories. And I change this too. So it's going to be go to product. Just so it doesn't interfere with the name. So where's that? Go to product. Okay. And let's start. So again, I'm just going to put this on its own line. Okay. Okay, let's do a V4. So same thing. We're going to do the product and the index because we're going to have to do that trick again. Product, index, in products. And let's do key equals product ID. And let's see what we get. Okay, so there should be, what, 8 or 10 products? 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Okay, so that looks right. So let's just fill in this information. So I'm going to change this to the icon. We have to bind it. What was it? Product.icon. This is product title. This is product tagline. This is product price. So we'll leave the $sign. We're going to do product.price divided by 100. And I think that's it. Okay, so that looks good. For this, you can just do some logic to change the lettering, the words here to get instead of 0. But I'm not going to do that. So these sections here differ. So if you look at the actual App Store, so it is apps and games we love right now. So we need different sections. So right, like you can see here, apps and games we love, and then these are still apps, but they're just top paid apps. So in our case, we're going to handle this on the back end. So let me show you what I mean. So let's go back to our back end. And we want to, instead of 1 set of products, we want 2, because we're in the Discover controller, and we want 1 for apps and games we love and 1 for top paid. So instead of 1 products, let me just remove this one and let's do another one. Let's make one called products love, And we don't really have any information about products we love. So I'm just going to do this. But in your real app, you would filter it down however you like. So I'm just going to pick 4 specific apps in random order. And again, limit 4 because in our section, there's only space for 4. But in the real app store, there's actually a carousel here, so you can grab more than 4 if you like. But like I said, we'll just keep it to what we currently have, so 4, and then we'll get it. And then we'll pass that here, products love, and then we'll make one more for products paid. So that's for this section, top paid. So we're just going to do product where the price is greater than 0. So that section won't return any free apps. And then let's order it by price descending. And how much space do we have here? We have 6. So yeah, we want limit 6. And that should do it. Let's pass that in as well. So products paid. And in our front end, we have to accept these now. So back to our front end. So this would be products love. And let's go ahead and define that in here, right here. So it will be coming back as products love. Cool. And we have to define that in our data instead of just products. So we need products love and products paid. And let's see what we get. So yeah, we have 4 here now. Before we had a whole bunch. And you can see it, if I refresh it, it's just in random order because that's what we specified on the back end. So if I refresh, yeah, so it's a whole new set. Cool. And let me just fix the padding here again. It's not a big deal, but let me just fix it real quick. So let's go there. We love. So right here, I just want to add, I'm just going to paste it in to save some time. So if it's an even number, I want to add PL6. So let's see if that. So yeah. So what I did was, if it's on this side, we want a padding left of 6. Okay. Okay, so now let's work on this top paid section over here. And the structure of this one is a bit different in that it goes top down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of this way. If it's this way, like up here, we can just wrap everything and we can just have one loop. But since it's this way, top to bottom and top to bottom, the structure of our HTML has to repeat. So we need a chunk method. So let me try to show you what I'm trying to talk about. Top paid. So right here, this 1/2 is just the left side. And then we have to do it again for this side. So that means we need a chunk method. And Laravel has a chunk method built in, but Vue does not. But Lodash does. So let's go ahead and install a chunk method on Lodash. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to do npm install lodash.chunk. So I only want that one method. Sorry, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so let's import that. So down here, let's just import chunk from lodash.chunk. And I'm going to make a new computer property here. Let's call it chunked items. And I'm just going to do this. Return chunk, which is the Lodash chunk method we just imported. And this dot products paid, and we want to chunk it in 3. So if you're still confused as to what chunk does, say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 an array. So what chunk does is it's going to split it up into 2 arrays. So for this, we want it in 3s, we say here. So it's going to be an array of 3. 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. So that's what chunk does. And that's what we need because the HTML is repeating after, in our case, each 3. Okay. So let's go to top paid. And this is the section we want to repeat for the chunked items. So here, that's the left side, and this is the right side. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me just put this on its own line, like I've been doing. Okay, so let's do v4, and let's say item, say index chunk, because there's going to be an index on the inner loop that we do. And chunked items. And let's just give it the key of index chunk. Okay. And let me remove the hard-coded one since now we're looping over it. So we don't need this section, this second one. Where does this end? This ends down here. Cool. Let's move this. Okay. And these are the actual products. So again, I'm going to put this on its own line. And let's make another v4 here that iterates over the items. Okay, so v4. So this one will be product. We'll just give this one a normal index. In item, because this is what we're currently iterating over in the chunk. And we can give it a key, product ID. And I think this should be go to product as well. Okay. And now we can just replace this stuff. So let me just change this to product dot icon, and let's bind that. And for the index, this is a bit tricky. So I'm just going to put the index in here. It's just going to be index plus 1. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We'll fix that after. This is product title. This is product tagline. And this is product price. Divide by 100. Yeah, you can have a computer property for this price as well, but I'll just leave it. Okay, let's see what we get. Actually, let me remove this because this is the hard-coded one. The next two are the hard-coded ones. So this one and this one. Okay, let's see if I did this correctly. And I did not. What did I do wrong? Okay, so there's no errors. Chunked items. Oh, so I forgot to set this here. So products paid. There should be products paid. And let's see if we get anything now. So there we go. Okay, so this, it looks like it's right. So yeah, it's sorting by price, descending, and these two are the most expensive, and it shows the most expensive products. That's not actually what top paid means. It doesn't mean the most expensive products, But I think you get the idea. You can change that in your backend to return the correct items that you want here, correct data. So let me just fix the spacing here. I'm just going to paste it because we've done this twice already. So back to where the chunked items are, right here. So we just want to add a class if it's even and if it's odd. So this is if it's on the left side, and this is if it's on the right side. So that should fix the spacing. So I think that worked. It's okay, I don't want to bother with that. You can fix that if it doesn't work. Oh, that's because we have to remove this. Let's see if that does anything. Okay, so yeah, that pushed this over, which is what I want. So we just have to fix this. 1, 2, 3. This should be 4, 5, 6. So let's fix that. So this is kind of just a hard-coded version. It's not as dynamic. For example, if I had more columns here, then it wouldn't work. I didn't really think about it too much. I just wanted to get 4, 5, 6 in there. So what I did was I did a conditional here, and I just checked if the index chunk was 0. And if it was, then we get 1, 2, 3. But if it's not, so I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to remove the vif and make velse. So let me just remove this. Oops, yeah, we don't need this. And it's going to be index plus 4. So that should work, but this only works for 2 columns. Like I said, I didn't think about it being too dynamic. So yeah, that works. That's cool for now. Okay, now let's work on clicking the story or the product and going to that page. So right now it's just hard-coded. And what we want to do here is, right now we're just passing in the title and rendering it here. So what we want to do is click this, pass in an ID, make another Ajax request to the show endpoint that we made, and just dump the information here. So let's quickly do that, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, so for the go-to story and the go-to product, I'm going to pass in the ID instead of the title. So do that. Let's do that. Same for go-to product. So ID. Okay. Now we have to change what we're passing in. Go-to story. So this should be story.id. Yeah. Same with this. And then that's it for go to story. Okay. Go to product. It should be product ID. Go to product. So this one as well. Sorry. Product ID. And that should be it. Okay, cool. So now in story, we're accepting the ID now. So let's see if that works. We're not making the Ajax request yet, but let's just see if it works. Same for the product. ID. Okay, refresh that. Okay, so that's the ID. This should be 2, I think. Okay. Oh, no, it's 5. That's right. This should be 2. Cool. So let's try the product as well. This is random, so I don't know what ID this is. 4. Okay, so it looks like it's working. So yeah, all we have to do is make an Ajax request. And that's about it. So let's start with story. And it's make a created hook here. I'll put underneath here. And let's do axios.get. Actually, you have to import Axios. Import Axios from Axios. Axios get. Let's do /stories/ID. So this ID, then response, and let's just set the state, which we'll make in a second. Response.data, and then let's catch the error. So this console log the error. Okay. Sorry, I'm missing a comma. And let's make some state here. So after this, just do data, and let's put this up. Return. And what am I in story? Okay, let's make it null to begin with. And let me just console log this. Response.data to make sure we're getting the information back. Okay, so we should be getting the corresponding story in our console. So let's go ahead and open DevTools. Console's open. Let me just refresh. So we should get this information in here. There we go. So yeah, all we have to do is dump the information here. Obviously, this page is not styled, so you would style it accordingly using Tailwind like I did in the first video, and then just dump all the information that we already have here. So to save on time, I'm just gonna paste in some code that just dumps it out here. So we no longer need this. And I just pasted this in, and we have to check if the story is available because we have to make sure the Ajax request is finished before it renders out any of the data, or this is going to be in undefined. So let's see if this works. Let's refresh. Sorry. So yeah, it's not going to work if you're here. As you can see, it works here, but if you refresh it, then it's not going to work because the prop is not passed in correctly. But it doesn't matter because you shouldn't be refreshing on this page. I think there's a way to disable refresh as well. In the App Store, you actually can't refresh. Okay, so yeah, that works. And this should work too. There you go, there's the information. And yeah, it's pretty much the same thing for this, the product view. So I'm just going to paste everything in for the product. So let me just go into product. I'm going to paste everything in. It's exactly the same thing as what we just did for story. Obviously the endpoint's different. Just remove this. Let me remove that in story as well. Okay, let's see if product works as well. Yeah, it works. So this is the information, and this is the two assets. So this corresponds to these two. It can be videos as well, but I just have images. Cool. So I just wanted to quickly go over the rest of the models in the App Store, which we didn't take a look at. This video is getting quite long, but if you're still here, this should only take a few minutes. So I just went through the App Store and pulled out the models and just tried to diagram the relationships between them. So this is an app I found on Product Hunt like a few weeks ago called Draw SQL, which is really cool and lets you draw database schemas and show the relationships between them. It's also built in Laravel, which is fitting for this video, so I figured I'd use it. So yeah, like I said earlier, the biggest model that we're missing is the users table, and this has many relationships. So users and products have a many-to-many relationship, and this is the pivot table between them. So the way I think about if a relationship is either one-to-many or many-to-many is I just speak it out, and if it makes sense, then it makes sense. So for example, does a user or can a user have many products? Of course, you can definitely have more than one product installed on your computer. So it makes sense from user to products, but does it also make sense the other way? So can a product belong to many users? Of course, many users can have the same app installed, so it makes sense to have a many-to-many relationship. So in the App Store, that will show up in here. So it will show all your installed apps. Products. So we have products already. And the relationships I have with products, like I said, we already have this one, which I just explained, but there's also reviews. So if you go into product, any product, say Daisy Disk, there's reviews here, right here. So product, the relationship between product has many. So a product has many reviews. Again, just speak it out. Can a product have more than one review? Definitely. Does a review belong to one product? Yes, it does. So product has many reviews. But also, there's also a relationship between users and reviews. And you can just go to a user's profile and see all the products that they reviewed. So there's also one-to-many relationship between users and reviews. So this assets table is for the product here. So you can store your assets in here, just so you don't have to have a set amount of assets. If you want 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter if you have an assets table. Again, it's a one-to-many relationship here. But you can also use this. I set it up so it's a polymorphic relationship. So if you need assets in some other model, for example, in stories, you can definitely set it up like that as well. And the other two I have are categories, which a product can have many categories. And this can either be one-to-many or many-to-many, depending on how you want to structure everything. If you want your product to only belong to one category, then it's one-to-many. If your product can belong in many categories, then it's going to be a many-to-many, and you need a pivot table. And stories are on its own. I'm not sure if they're tied to users. They can be, but the way I structured it here was it's just on its own and not related to any of the other models. So there you have it, guys. We managed to add a Laravel backend to our App Store application and wire it up to our Vue frontend. We also took a look at these relationships, and this is how you would continue to build out the rest of the application. I hope you like this one, and I hope you learned something new. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.